Welcome to the Kirkpatrick Podcast, bridging traditions and trends in learning and performance evaluation. Whether you're a seasoned learning professional or just starting out, join us as we dive into the Kirkpatrick model like never before. Through stories and insights, we are fusing time-honored methods with cutting-edge innovations to help you navigate the ever-evolving world of learning and performance evaluation.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Kirkpatrick Podcast. Today, we have an incredible guest joining Jim and myself, Melanie Martinelli. Hi, Melanie. Thank you for being
Vanessa.
here.
Hi, Jim.
Hey, Melanie.
Melanie combines her entrepreneurial spirit with her 15 plus years of experience in learning and development to help build memorable and results-based learning experiences. In her roles as Senior Transfer Enabler at the Institute for Transfer Effectiveness and founder of Going Beyond Training, Melanie is passionate about making transfer happen. Melanie applies strong business acumen, rich practical experience across cultures, and a deep understanding of what makes learning stick to support her clients in being more strategic in their L&D initiatives. And very fun fact, she is one of our amazing speakers for the Kirkpatrick Summit this June. So Melanie, welcome to the show. Welcome to all of our friends.
Yay, thank you.
Yeah. So before we jump into all of the questions that Jim and I have for you, I definitely want to touch more on the Senior Transfer Enabler. That sounds like a really cool job. I'd love to hear a little bit more in your own words about your experience. And of course, your background and experience with Kirkpatrick.
Yeah, well, background with Kirkpatrick, and let's see, maybe Jim is going to correct me because he actually should know that just exactly like I do. Jim, when was it? 12 years ago, 15 years ago about? I'm not sure, but that's when I met Jim.
That's close.
I think that's close in Dubai. But maybe what brought me there is, I have a background where I studied finance as well. And so I actually started my career in sales. And I was managing and leading outsourcing teams, in India that were collaborating with teams in Europe. And somehow, sometimes there were some cultural differences. And because I was from Switzerland and I had studied culture as well, they asked me, can you offer some coaching or training to our associates to help them work better across cultures? Now, I had no idea about training, but, I kind of started putting some sessions together and running them. But given my finance background, I always started wondering, well, is that actually working? What's the impact? I mean, I'm spending all this time and money on these training initiatives, but so what? And so I started Googling, how do you actually measure the impact of training initiatives? And guess what? Of course, I stumbled over Kirkpatrick and then kind of, spoke to my boss at that time if I could, dig a little bit deeper into this. At that time, it wasn't approved, so I kind of let it go. And when I then started my own business, focusing on cross-cultural training for IT practitioners, I actually then contacted the Kirkpatricks and I went to Dubai to learn more about it. And the rest is history.
Oh, amazing. Dubai. This is like the third sign in the last 2 days that I need to go to Dubai. So I don't know, you all might see me out there.
We have a wonderful affiliate there as well.
Yes, we do. So Jim, is that an accurate representation of how she got started? Did she get close?
I think that is accurate. And I think two things with Melanie, she describes things well. She's accurate about her dates and stuff. But the one thing that is amazing about her is you cannot not be affected by time with Melanie. There is no way it's going to happen. She has a speed that's pretty much a fast speed as far as engagement. And the neat thing about that is a lot of people benefit from the learning from Melanie. I know that, but it's because she connects with them and she grabs hold of you and doesn't let go and is going to interact with you and get you to interact with her. And it takes a lot of energy, though, doesn't it, Melanie? Because I know you just told us a few minutes ago that you've got to go up to the mountains to recharge.
Yeah, well, we all do. We all need our systems around us to sometimes re-energize. But, in the intro you said, Vanessa, that I kind of know what it takes to make learning stick. And you, Jim, speak about, the engagement, and I kind of get hold of people. I don't let them just, I kind of hang on, but I think that's exactly what makes it stick. For me, training has never just been an event. It's always been about what comes after as well. And I think for that, you really need to create connections. I think, part of also inspiring people to really apply what they've learned comes by staying in touch and, kind of engaging with them. It's not just that you see them once and then you let them off. So I think that's also where that motivation is kind of coming from.
And you know what? You just said, I'm going to quote you. I'm pretty sure Danielle could read back what you said, but you said, quote, "You hang on to make it stick."
Yeah.
Right. You remember saying that? And that is exactly how it works. It isn't the content that sticks. You say you hang on to them and they hang on to you. And that forms the basis, the relationship, the motivation to help it stick, whatever it is that you're teaching. Do you have any story that you can tell recently about where that has happened and a very good outcome came?
Yeah, I mean, there's loads. I think it's right. I mean, I think for me, it's really, it's that aspect of that I want the people to succeed. I when I do a training, I want them to be successful. But I think I know from my own experience that that's very hard times to do when you're left alone. You need someone sometimes to just stick around and kind of be to be the person pushing you or giving you that confidence to do it, or kind of, someone motivating you when you're kind of feeling low to just kind of give it a try. And, a recent story where we've done that, not just in, for example, actually, why not take an example around Kirkpatrick? Just recently, we certified a couple of people out of Australia on silver and then even gold. And now one of the person, and because I have a good relationship with her, I'm sure I can even say her name, Sonia, it just makes it more personal. Yeah. So, Sonia got certified on bronze ages ago. I mean, quite some time ago. And she went through loads of changes in her job and had to keep changing her project. But I just always kept following up. I never gave up. I kept sending reminders. I kept, sending her an encouragement. Hey, where do you stand? You want to touch base? Because I also knew that she was in an environment that was changing a lot. So she was maybe not getting the support she needed to really follow through. And so I just kind of, I said, I know she can do this. I just kind of kept staying in touch, for example.
Hey, Vanessa, would you follow up with that? Because I know that's what you do with us as well.
Yeah,
you'd stick
absolutely.
around.
I mean, I try to. Hopefully I do a good job. I think that's what I was going to say actually is that's very admirable because you are busy, right? You're running a company, but other folks that you are certifying as well, working with other customers. How do you find that you can stay around and hang on for others? And what are other sports, or as we like to call them, drivers, that you like to put into place to be those supports when maybe you can't be there?
Yeah. I mean, I think you're bringing up a very, good point. I mean, this was very easy when the business was small, when there were just a few programs a year. And I think that's also probably people listening in. They wonder, okay, how do you do that when you have thousands of people that you train? I mean, you can't stick around for everyone. And I think that's when, if we speak about what we call the driver, that support package after a program to help people apply what they've learned, to really think about scalability. And so one thing, for example, that we've done in my own business, but I also see other clients doing that, is so-called community cafes as well. So, for example, on a regular basis, like once a quarter, it's not massive. So it's not a big effort. Once a quarter, we have a 1-hour community cafe. Anyone who's ever been certified by us can join in. And sometimes it's just a free flow, where we just exchange, in breakout rooms, what are some of the challenges with regard to evaluation that you face? What ideas do some people have to address that? Sometimes I bring content to the session and we discuss it. But the idea is to show people you're not alone out there. We are there to support. Because I mean, it's the same people that we certify on Kirkpatrick, they have the same challenge as people in organizations. It's, they come to a program, learn a lot of great stuff, but if they don't have the support system around them in their organization, it becomes extremely hard for them to apply. And we all know evaluation isn't easy. It can be, but it takes a lot of effort building these bridges and, with different stakeholders. So there's a lot of work involved in evaluation, a lot of barriers you might find. So one thing that I found very useful is the community cafes. And another tool that I find very cool, and this is one that I did not develop, and that's actually what you said, senior transfer enabler at the Institute of Transfer Effectiveness sounds exciting. This is actually an idea that was developed by Ina, who's the founder of that institute, who specializes in transfer. And it's called Transfer News. And so what this is, do you remember, maybe you had it in school as well, we had it here in Switzerland. When I was younger, before mobile phones, when there was a change in your schedule, the teacher called one person at the top of the list in the alphabet, and then that student had to call the next person, the next person, the next person. I don't know how you call that, like a chain call or whatever. And so inspired by that system, we do these transfer news where, let's say, 1 week after the last session, the facilitator sends out short news sharing how he or she applied, some stuff from the training, and then calls upon one student or one participant, according to a list, to share some news the next week. And so let's say you have 20 participants for 20 weeks. You have authentic news from participants, how they've started to use the learnings. And it also creates a very nice positive peer pressure. Because let's say I shared something in week 1, you then, Vanessa, in week 2, feel like, I need to share something, Melanie did it. And then Jim, of course, starts thinking, well, I don't want to let those two down. I'm going to share mine as well. And so that's another one, where you are not the one sticking around all the time, but you're designing a process that helps for people to kind of stick around for each other, if that makes sense.
Now hold it a second, Melanie.
Jim and I...
We work with trainers and instructional designers.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like what you're talking about.
What do you mean?
You're going off the grid there. You're going beyond people putting together a program and other people delivering it for the learners, and then they go back across the bridge to their workplace and you wish them well.
Yeah. So I mean, I think you can't just. I think the job, if you're an instructional designer or a trainer, for me, that job was never just I train, I disappear, or I design and I hand it off. It's always been about designing the ecosystem, like everything that's around it, starting from the before experience, the during, and the after. And so in this case, if I'm the facilitator, I start implementing this kind of transfer news concept, but I've also, designed it in programs that others ran. And so all I do is I provide the templates to make it easy for people afterwards to implement. And it's one of the tools that we've had, great feedback on from lots of our clients, because it's very scalable. It doesn't take a lot of time to do. And the cool thing is, even from an evaluation perspective, just imagine the kind of data you're collecting through those emails of how people are sharing, how they started to use what they've learned. That is all wonderful, anecdotal, qualitative data that you can use to supplement your quantitative data that you might have collected somewhere else on the impact of the program.
Speaking of that,
I got to ask Vanessa. Now, Melanie, I heard you use the word ecosystem. Okay, a lot of people, when they think of evaluation as just measuring things, a smile sheet at level 1, a test at level 2, and a 90-day survey at level 3. Vanessa has been calling it a culture lately. Vanessa, would you mind telling us what you mean by an evaluation culture?
Yes, I absolutely can. So one of the things that, similar to what you were sharing, Melanie, it's not about designing that one magic pill that will get everybody to learn and transfer behavior, right? It has to be that ecosystem. But in order to do that, there has to be a culture of evaluation, which means you have to have all these things in place, right? Meaning the safe space to be able to know that your job is actually planning for the ecosystem and helping people know their role in that. The standard operating procedures, having support in order to help get, so I love those community cafes that you were sharing earlier, by getting that support from others. How do you have those, where those challenges and how are you overcoming them, as well as finding what works for your organization to track and measure. I know you and I have talked a lot about the measurements and dashboards and things like that. How can we develop those and make it easy? And then it starts to become a culture of continuous improvement and evaluation.
Yeah.
And that's where you can start to really see that that stickiness. But I'd love to know from you, in terms of metrics and things like that, what metrics and indicators are you using to evaluate the effectiveness of your initiative?
Well, I mean, that really depends, of course. I mean, and I know this sounds now really cheesy, because it kind of goes back to that famous statement. I mean, it just kind of stuck with me ever since I met Jim. You got to start with the end in mind. So, I mean, depending on what the goal of an initiative is, that's the kind of metrics that we'll pay attention to. I mean, it's, I always, for any of my programs, I always complete a so-called goal canvas, which is just a very simplified version of a 4-level evaluation plan, where I just capture stakeholder expectations, what will tell the stakeholders that an initiative is on track, which is the leading indicators, and what is the change in behavior, the expected behaviors that they are expecting to see. And based on that, whatever that conversation leads to, I will kind of define my evaluation strategy and, of course, put that in place. So it's never a one size fits all. It really depends on what the goal of an initiative is. If the goal of the initiative is to improve sales, well, it will probably have a lot more sales metrics involved. Whereas if it's all about reducing attrition, that's a completely different topic. So I think, evaluation always for me goes back to that. That's just a message that really, stuck. Start with the end in mind.
Let me ask you this, Melanie. You could just go online and look up their mission and say, okay, there's the end in mind. You just use the word conversation.
Yeah.
What other benefits do you get from a conversation with those people besides just getting their impression of what the end in mind is?
I mean, many. I think it's from the start. I think, one of the biggest hurdles in creating that, what I said before, that ecosystem, is when you don't have the required partnerships in place. And I think one of the reasons why people might not extend the support you need them to extend to you is because they weren't involved in it. And so getting people involved early on and having these conversations, it has a benefit for me that I really understand the need, which of course then also allows me to validate, do we even have a training need? And if we do, what should I pack into the training and how to measure it? But it also creates more, I don't know whether ownership and accountability is the right word, but it creates more of a buy-in. I think buy-in is the better word. It creates more of a buy-in of the different stakeholders in really understanding from the start what this initiative is about and what role they will have to play. I think it was you, Jim, who once, I'm sure it was in Dubai, it's another one that really, one of these messages, you said once to me, you don't just want stakeholders to sign off on a check. You want them to sign on to an initiative. And I think that's the key there. I don't just want them to say, hey, here's 100,000, run the initiative. I rather have them actually give me, less money, but more of their support to make the initiative a success. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like to be paid.
I mean, I'll take 100,000.
Don't get me wrong there.
I'll take it.
No. But the thing is, what I mean by that is I'd rather have less money put into the training event itself.
Yeah.
But more money and resources put in what comes after and before. That's what I mean. I think it's just more about how we allocate the budget.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know. Would you take it?
Yeah. I also think that will be, if they're involved with you, and what that does is it develops trust through your conversation, through your good listening, through the results they see. More likely, instead of you having to wait for the budget, they're going to come to you and say, hey, wait, I've got someone else I want you to help.
Yeah.
Because then, we call them leading indicators. A good sign, Melanie, that you are doing the right thing is they will reach out to you rather than you have to reach out to them and say, is there anything I can do for you?
But, even just based on what you said, even just there, if you just define those leading indicators in isolation, it's really hard to then prove that the training was really playing a role in improving them.
Right.
Whereas if you kind of build, that story together. So what do you think? If this happens, which indicator should we see, improving or, on what should this have a positive impact? You don't have to sell it afterwards anymore. They've already agreed that your initiative will be linked to that. And I think that's something in the beginning that I sometimes did a little bit wrong. I knew all of this, but I gave up sometimes a little bit too fast when stakeholders didn't want to have the conversation, thinking, okay, I can figure it out myself. But then it was an uphill battle afterwards. You start collecting the evaluation data and everyone starts questioning, but wait a minute, what does the training have to do with this metric, with this leading indicator? And so you're constantly trying to prove a point. Whereas if you establish that together from the start, and you're also clear on who plays what role, that's just so much easier.
Can you share a little bit more to that point on how you were able to kind of shift your mindset and have that conversation with your stakeholders, right? Because I think like many of our listeners, and I know I fall into the same trap, after hearing, not very interested in having this conversation, I shut down myself a little bit and go into my comfort zones. I'd love to hear some strategies that you've used.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've also, just like you, sometimes I've given up, but what I've learned over the years is, and it's really hard sometimes to know exactly what it is, but part of it was really also just saying, hey, look, actually really admitting that I might not understand their business, really kind of playing, not the dumb person. I mean, that's the wrong way of saying it, but really kind of going out there and say, hey, look, I might be a good instructional designer. I might be a great trainer, but, I don't know the in and out of your organization. And maybe that's easier for an external, because maybe internal, you kind of feel you're expected to know. But I think that's one thing that has really helped. You say, look, I really, need, I'm just curious, I really want to understand. And that really helps me afterwards. The other thing is sometimes also just kind of find what I call a little bit of a compromise. So as I said, I very often use this goal canvas, which is a very simple, kind of sheet where I just capture stakeholder expectation, which is kind of, the why behind an initiative, and then how you could maybe measure it, and, also the critical behaviors. And what I sometimes do is I fill this out on my own based on the knowledge I have, and I send it to them for validation. And that's very often where I realize that's when the conversation starts, because that's when they go, hey, wait a minute, Melanie, you got this wrong. Okay, then can we talk? So that's been kind of an interesting strategy to say, okay, let me capture what I think you're talking about, and then say, can you sign, pretty much that this is the business need, this is what you're looking for. Based on that, I will then develop a proposal. Yeah. And kind of insisting on that was very powerful, because that's where very often they say, no, wait a minute, you got that wrong. Or wait, that's actually this, you should talk to this person.
I got one more question for you.
Yeah.
You've been working hard and obviously you expend a lot of energy. You're going to the mountains in a few days. What is it about the mountains that recharges your spirit?
It's a good question. It's a good question what it really is. I think it's well, first of all, it's the no screen time. It's well, of course you could also get that at an ocean, but for me, it's I'm very active in the mountains. And again, you can do that in the, on the beach as well. But for me, at the mountains, I climb, I go snowboarding, I ski, I do a lot of these physical activities that can really exhaust me, but hence they take away my mind from everything else. Whereas when I laze around at the beach, my brain just never stops. It just kind of keeps thinking. Whereas in the mountains, for example, now I'm teaching my son how to ski, you're busy with something else. And so I don't have time to think about work. And that just kind of then really gives me that peace. But it's also when you're on top of a mountain, you just look outside. It's just this massive universe that you see, everything looks so small, and that's just very peaceful. I don't know. Nothing really, special.
I have a way that I'm active on the beach. It's my hand and my margarita to my mouth, back and forth all day.
I love it.
Just one arm gets,
Vanessa, I was in Mauritius, in November, and
that's
my
another way to stop thinking.
We had our caipirinhas and everything, and I love that. But I like that to relax. But especially when there's a lot going on my mind, I need something that's like more physically draining that then kind of recharges me mentally.
Oh, I'm totally off my game. And my whole team knows it. If I have not worked out, which I have not always since I've been under the weather. So sorry, guys.
Yeah.
That being, active in some sort of way helps to like reset me, or, even when I go for walks, my brain ends up on fire. And actually I find that I have the clarity to make decisions that I could not make just from sitting in my desk.
Interesting.
But you know what, as I just listened to you, and I know, I'm just, it just kind of triggered this thought, when we started talking about also, okay, so what are these different things you can do to support people? Similarly to what recharges you, what recharges me, if you're going to take this, it's also about, again, there to realize that it's not a one size fits all. And depending on what kind of training you're launching or initiative, to really understand the context in which your learners are and what could be possible barriers, constraints that they have in applying, your driver package will have to look very, very differently. Let's say someone comes out of a training and you realize their confidence is very low. That requires a very different support than if someone has commitment challenges, or, when whatever other, so there can be multiple things, standing in the way of application. And I think that's also very important to find out what your learners might need. And it's sometimes not a one size fits all. Like you sent me to the mountains and you sent Vanessa, to the beach. And I think the same is though with learners as well. Some of them will need a lot of coaching. Others might just need a checklist. Some people just, need a little bit of a kick in the butt. Others need, it's just very different from person to person.
And some don't enjoy, I hate external validation. Yeah. Like, don't thank me. Don't recognize me.
Yeah.
Give me, actually, I like to get more work because that shows that you have trust in me to continue doing, you know what I mean? So it's really understanding that everyone is unique and there is a way to personalize, which feels hard, right? Especially when you're one person, you've got all these things to do. But I think there's so many opportunities now to do personalization in a way that's easy and scalable.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I just have one last comment about that. I've been enjoying this. Now all of a sudden I'm upset. Okay. Yeah. I'm feeling anxiety here. And it's because our industry spends so much time on learning preferences, all the different X's and Y's and boomers and all that stuff. Enough already. We've got that pretty much figured out. What you're talking about is performance preferences and action preferences and motivation kind of things. And we ought to be spending more time figuring out what will enthuse and compel and encourage people to do their job rather than how do we shove information into their minds all the time.
Yeah.
So now I feel better. I just got that off my chest.
Oof. I'm almost got him hot under the collar.
Very good. But I think it's a very good, it's a very valid point, Jim. And I think, the other day, I don't know in which context it was, but I got very upset by, it was something on LinkedIn that really triggered me because I see all this focus of always how to make everything in your design even better, even nicer designs, nice. And don't get me wrong, nicer writing on flip charts and all kinds of stuff. And there's all this money that goes into some of these things. And I'm thinking, is that really going to make such a big difference? If we could just equally focus on spending some of those resources on what truly matters afterwards, wouldn't we just see much more impact?
Wouldn't it though? And doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's what we're all about.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Melanie, this has been such an amazing conversation. I want to thank you so much for joining us. It's been so great to talk about personalization and really that package and the performance package that you can put into place in order to help with that transfer of learning. Where can our audience connect with you to further the conversation?
Well, actually, at the moment, it's the easiest to just go on LinkedIn, I guess, on the Kirkpatrick website. No, I mean, on the Kirkpatrick website, you should find me.
And the summit.
I know, at the
Live.
summit, exactly. I'm going to the summit. And if anyone travels by in Switzerland, you can actually find me there in person. But no, I think if you just put in my name into Google, you will probably find quite a few things about me.
I bet we will.
And actually, can you give us a sneak peek of what your talk is about for the summit?
Let me think. My talk. Oh yeah, my talk at the summit is going to be about. I've never really come across a client that said transfer is not important. So they all say it is important. But I've worked with so many clients where their actions actually say something very different. So it's a little bit about finding out what are some very often unintentional and unconscious signals that organizations are sending to their learners that actually undermine transfer, and how we can change them so that our talk and walk are more aligned, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'll show up for that.
So it goes a little bit into that organizational culture as well around learning that we will explore.
Well, we're definitely looking forward to it. Melanie, thank you again for being here. And friends, make sure you connect with Melanie on LinkedIn and at the KP Summit. We will see you all in our next episode. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.